Very good. Everybody have a nice lunch? Good. Yeah, our caterer did a really good job. All right then, I'm going to go sit down and listen. Do remember me. Do remember me. Do remember me. Look away beyond the blue. Midnight outside of Memphis. The only light for miles. An 18-wheeler runs over a rubber hose. The ding so loud we kind of dance in the gas station office. My mama collects herself for customers, tugs her 3-hook bra, shoves her hair up under a Tommy's SO ball cap. The name Ethel cross-stitched on the station shirt, like she's become one of the ingredients in the gas she pumps to put me through school. She lingers longer than I'd like in the driver's side windows. Young men cling to her cleavage. Nasty answers to her question fill her up. Car after Cadillac car, she rams the shiny shaft of the jointed nozzle down the dark hole of the tanks. Rapping her knuckle on the back window lets them know she's through. An oil-stained rag hangs off her pocket. Around her neck, she wears a locket, a picture of me pressed inside. Sometimes she pulls out prematurely. The slippery fuel kind of drips down the drain. She'll strike a match on her zipper to light another smoke. Oh Lord, that woman plays with fire. And for years, I burn with what I learned there on the outskirts of Memphis. You see, a young girl can't fathom what a hard woman knows. In listening to the hearings today, I love how the sound of the earth literally comes up out of people's mouths. So whatever land you were born over, it seems like it comes out of your mouth in the way you bend the vowels or you clip consonants. So it's very, and I was looking at this amazing sculpture too and thinking, wow, the land literally will come out of your mouth, and you know, whether it's speaking or crying out or whatever. And it's so interesting to know where people are from and to listen to the sound of their voice to get where they're from. In my family, I remember, when you ask somebody where they're from, they're always, you say the town first. And then they'll get to nipping on some Robitussin. And then the whole thing changes, goes a little deeper, where you're from. And I'd be interested in hearing from you where some of you are from, but this is where I'm from. I'm from a dancing bunch of silly siblings, moonwalking like Michael Jackson to Smokey Robinson's Tears of a Clown. I'm from a dank kitchen of burnt bacon and the pop sound of a face slapping for daring to dispute the word of my mad mama. College boy, Yankee. I'm from a half-broke horse, hogs, 2 cats, and 6 dogs named Rascal number 1, Rascal number 2, Rascal number 3, 4, 5, and Rascal number 6. Can I get a witness? Do you hear me? I'm from the foul line, way past dinner time. Sink 20 free throws or don't come inside for supper. I'm from a tearful team of 2 tall girls whose only dream is to one day sit up at the right hand of Pat Head Summit and play ball for Tennessee. I'm from suspender-wearing octogenarians, idling gregarians, shoving checkers on a grocery store porch, hopped up on 6 glasses of sweet tea a day. I'm from a ruby red telephone, sitting all alone when the prank calling panty man solicits my sister, and my daddy blows his referee whistle into the receiver till he's hot damn blue in the face. I'm from squatting spying on the next door neighbor who threatens to rip the stitches from the witch's back if she won't cut out all that complaining. I'm from fire, more than ice, Bible, more than brains, Captain Kangaroo hee-haw and a blue bond with the board. I'm from Nina and Jonas, Addie and Bill, and my brother. Mostly my brother. His shuck and jive dance steps around that beehive back bedroom. I'm from back then, more than right now. Can you go there? Do you know how? Where are you from? Where on earth are you from? Of the family I grew up in were my great aunts, and the way they talked everybody, well, if you'd done anything, they'd talk you down, basically. But it was some part of the glue that held the family together, and I remember that being not necessarily a bad thing. It was the way the news came through. My great aunts literally would get together at any Sunday down by the barn in this sort of triangle shape and start, kind of bringing the news on about who'd done what. We even nicknamed them after some chickens because they looked like that. We called them Cluck, Cackle, and Peck. Poor old Daryl, Biddy's Cluck over cracking Coca-Colas. Linda has let herself go. They peck popcorn from a Tupperware bowl and cackle. Ah! She's big as the broadside of keep house. She won't wear a girdle. All those filthy cats she keeps. Somebody ought to call the law. My boy Sam saw her soldering car parts into sculptures in the night sky. And there Daryl's breaking his back on the graveyard shift. Oh, she'll be the death of Daryl. Mark my word. I heard she was over at the song leader's house bumping uglies to some Chet Atkins records. That's just gossip. I wouldn't touch the wicked woman with the Jesus-sanctioned 10-foot pole. Wipe the dust from your feet, girls. Linda has rule. She's let herself go. These clucked curses, chicken shit. Only fertilized Linda's leaving. Lord, they like to hat fit. The night she hiked her skirt and lit out of that two-bit dumb cluck town. And by the grace of God, Linda let herself go. She let herself go. Let herself go, all right. Go, Linda. Go, go, go! I'll do one more for you before we get back started. So these women in my family have just had huge impacts on the story I tell myself about who I am. And I have found in listening to stories from other people, we only change sometimes when the story we tell ourselves about who we are changes. And so it's been really interesting for me to hear these stories out loud and my family to come and hear them. One of my aunts was so not seeing that she literally shrunk. Like each year I would see her, it looked like she was almost, wasting away or turning into a ghost or something. As if she'd been ghosted. His manufactured housings haunted. By a spouse who's wanting something she can't get up the gumption to ask for. Pacing plastic rug runners. A hooded white terry cloth bathrobe. Rattling her ball and chain. Pray and he'll speak her name. It's Lorraine. You kind of lose something if your name ain't called and your face ain't seen. Your beauty gets buried. You know what I mean? He hadn't summoned her since he, hot damn you, Lorrainer, at the chili cook-off fire hall fundraiser for loading his bowl full of Tabasco. He'd made a ghost of her, staring straight through her at the TV, nursing buds, acting in public like he didn't know who on earth she was. cast iron skillet. Hoping that maybe she could still feel it. Poor Lorraine. You kind of lose something if your name ain't called and your face ain't seen. Your beauty gets buried. Do you know what I mean? She's just a docile haint in that hand-hued jade. The match made in heaven become a living hell for this see-through woman folded up on a hideaway bed. The roving face of the oscillating fan, one lazy eye, her mechanical friend, tracks every move. One night she stands before that fan, its face a cage in both her hands, spits each letter into the electric breeze. You kind of lose something if your name ain't called and your face ain't seen. Your beauty gets buried. Do you know what I mean? Call my name. Call my name. It's Lorraine.
Excuse me. Got it?
It's off balance.
Let me step back.
Off balance.
No, he broke it.
So it's got to be my fault.
You're the man in the room.
Come on, Maria.
Sorry, Bob.
Overwhelmed.
Okay, we're going to cover now the destruction of communities and social disintegration. And did I just kick on? What I've seen happen throughout my 44 years here in West Virginia, around where I live at, I've seen in the area of 30 communities that have just dried up and disappeared. And one thing that they have nearly all had in common was expanding mountaintop removal. You can't have mountaintop removal and communities. You have one or the other. And in most of the areas around where I live at, it's the communities that are disappearing. And there was an article that came out in New York Times. It's actually dated for April the 13th of last year, and the title of it is "As Mountaintops Fall, a Coal Town Vanishes." So the folks that want to look for that article and read it, it's a good read about this very subject. And what I want to do is read just a quick quote from one of the community members of Lindytown. Lindytown in 2008 was a very lively community. There was a church, there was kids running and playing in the yard, there was, it was a very active community. And I was lucky enough to be a child in this community, so I knew a lot of the people that lived there. And James Smith was one of the people that was put out of Lindytown. And I think that his words really, okay. In the end, Mr. Smith says he would not be living 150 miles away, far from his relations and old neighbors, if mountaintop removal hadn't ruined Lindytown. You might as well take the money and get rid of your torment, he says, adding that he received more than $300,000 for his property. After they destroyed our place, they done us a favor and bought it. And that's basically what's going on, is after the companies come in and ruin your quality of life, trash your water, ruin your air, ruin the community, ruin the health of the people in the community. Then they come in and offer you an amount of money. So the ladies here will be talking also about the destruction of community. And who we have talking is Willa May. She's the Executive Director of Appalachian Voices. Willa May is the expert. I'm sorry, I missed that. And then we've also got Charmaine Chapman Crane is a member of KFDC, and Dr. Laura Miller, who's a field organizer for SAMS.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I think I need to raise this a little bit. My name again is Willa Mays, and I'm Executive Director of Appalachian Voices. My testimony today will show evidence that mountaintop removal coal mining directly causes serious damage and social disintegration in Appalachian communities. I think we're going to have some images here in a moment. Can anyone see that? The images are pretty important in this, I think you can see. Can we lower the lights maybe? Okay, I'll go ahead. Mountaintop removal coal mining has diminished the quality of life in Central Appalachia. Mountains that have been home to generations of Appalachian residents have literally been turned upside down. This is happening on an enormous scale. A single mine can span miles of Appalachian ridges. Native trees, ginseng roots, and rare orchids have been buried by tons of debris. People are poisoned, displaced, their homes destroyed, their cemeteries desecrated, and the perpetrators are often viewed as too big or too powerful to fight. In coal-bearing regions, the fabric of communities has been ripped apart by an industry that not only destroys ecological and human health, but the democratic institutions that most Americans take for granted. With its wealth, the coal industry has managed to acquire disproportionate political influence in Central Appalachia, as demonstrated by recent polls that show a majority of residents in the region where mountaintop removal occurs, 57%, oppose the practice, even though almost every state and federal elected official from the region supports it. and the coal industry's political influence extends beyond Appalachia as well. West Virginia Senators Jay Rockefeller and Joe Manchin played a key role in defeating the Senate climate bill in 2010. And many recent bills in Congress designed to weaken clean air and clean water safeguards have been sponsored by representatives of Appalachian coal regions. Yet 78% of residents support increasing Clean Water Act protections, with just 9% opposing. According to Gallup's Well-Being Report, of all 435 congressional districts in the nation, residents of the 2 districts where most mountaintop removal mining occurs ranked second to last and very last in physical and emotional well-being. Not surprisingly, the congressmen representing these districts, Nick Rahal of West Virginia and Hal Rogers of Kentucky, were recently listed among the 14 most corrupt members of Congress in a report by Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, D.C. Communities have become polarized. You are either on the side of the coal companies and thereby justify their every action, or you are against them and characterized as a tree hugger. Some of us like that. There seems to be no in-between. This polarization has led to open hostility and even violence. Marsh Fork Elementary School became a polarizing issue in Coal River Valley, West Virginia, and for many an example of how coal companies are willing to put residents at risk. The school sits directly beneath a 375-foot earthen dam holding back 2.8 billion gallons of liquid coal slurry. Factions were divided between local residents who demanded that the school be moved and those who had bought into the coal industry's rhetoric that there was no problem despite the fact children and teachers were sick, and if the dam failed, school officials would have less than 5 minutes to evacuate the students. It took more than half a decade to convince state and local officials to agree to build a new school, but as of today, classes are still being held in Marsh Fork, and local residents remain bitterly divided. Mountaintop removal leaves behind vast swaths of loose rock and dirt, dramatically increasing the risk of more frequent and more powerful flooding. In 2009, a massive flood tore through Breathitt County, Kentucky. That was the 19th flood to take place in that area in 11 years. A Virginia engineering firm found that surface mining in the area likely increased the peak flow of that flood by as much as 80%. The 2009 flood tore away nearly 500 private bridges, destroyed hundreds of homes, and covered miles of the community in more than a foot of mud. With the poverty level in the Appalachian coal-bearing regions hovering near 20%, families find it difficult to rebuild after each flood and face the possible necessity of moving away from their homes. Polluting of groundwater and streams is also forcing residents in many Appalachian communities to make the choice to stay or go. When the pH level in Raccoon Creek, situated near a mountaintop removal mine, became so high it killed all of the fish and also the birds that drank from the stream, Rick Hanshoe of Eastern Kentucky made the difficult decision to not build a planned home on land that has been in his family for generations. Some families struggle for even basic access to clean drinking water, including 13 homes in Pike County, Kentucky, that are struggling with wells contaminated by explosive methane. One family's well was reportedly able to maintain a continuous flame for more than 3 months. State regulatory agencies have failed to hold coal companies accountable for violating Clean Water Act laws, and local citizens and NGOs are then forced to appeal to state and federal courts for protection of their water. With these challenges, it is not surprising that once vibrant communities have now disappeared. When your property values plummet, your home is covered with dust, your children are going to school under life-threatening conditions, and the mountains where you once gathered ginseng or hunted for deer are literally gone. Soon the people are gone as well. Along West Virginia's Rum Creek, 9 communities have all but disappeared in towns like Dehew and Yolen. Residents were evicted from homes owned by a coal company. Straw-covered lots are all that remain of the Yolen homes, and downtown Dehew has been replaced by a coal preparation plant. In the town of Blair, West Virginia, depopulation started in the mid-90s when surface mining began nearby. Foundations cracked, wells dried up, property values dropped, and coal companies bought out residents. Blair's population fell from nearly 3,000 residents to 75, and the community of Lindytown that Maria mentioned, profiled in a New York Times article, is now a ghost town. And finally, the sense of history and of belonging to a place is utterly destroyed when generations-old family burial sites are desecrated or made inaccessible. On West Virginia's Cook Mountain, 3 family cemeteries are in the shadow of mountaintop removal operations, and there are about 40 other small cemeteries in the area. For Dustin White, more than 200 years worth of family heritage lies within the graves of his family's cemetery, yet the family burial ground is an island on the brink of destruction. Larry Gibson of Capron Mountain actually watched a bulldozer push half his family's 300-year-old cemetery off a high wall and into a sprawling mountaintop removal operation. Protections for cemeteries in West Virginia are limited, but even the protected ones can be relocated by coal companies under current laws. A 2011 peer-reviewed study ordered by the coal industry itself, initially conducted to debunk other scientific studies showing the inherent health problems associated with coal mining, indicated that the culture of coal in Appalachia leads to substantial economic and cultural disadvantages that adversely impact mental and physical well-being. Mountaintop removal is tearing apart the communities of Appalachia. Mountaintop removal must be made illegal, and state regulatory agencies must hold coal companies accountable to Clean Water Act laws. Thank you.
I want to thank OVEC for bringing Jeff, Gaia, and me here today, and I appreciate the opportunity to have my voice heard. I am Charmin Chapman Crane, and I have lived in Eola, Kentucky for 25 years. Eola is an old Cherokee word for Valley of the Winds, for our valley lies between Pine and Black, Kentucky's 2 highest mountains. When we settled there, our son was 5 months old. There were several deep mines on up the road from us. Most men worked in the mines. On our road, just 3 miles long, there were 3 little stores, one with a gas station, a custard stand, a grade school with 250 children, kindergarten through 8th grade, a post office, and 3 churches. The valley was beautiful. Many miners and their families kept the stores busy. Today, surface mining is the rage. Companies employing less than half the miners than 20 years ago have caused 2 of the 3 stores to close, and the school is reduced to 110 students, forcing teachers to leave. Many of our families have left. This is Congressional District number 5 of our nation's 350 districts. My district is at the bottom in physical and emotional health. We have the highest mortality rate, and the highest drug abuse rate per capita in the nation. A couple of companies started surface mining at the head of our road 7 years ago, just about a mile above us. Shortly after they commenced their destruction, I developed asthma. About 2 years ago, they started mining right behind us, a 10-minute walk from our back door to the mine site. Explosives being set off usually 3 times a day, often the explosion catching us unaware, and the tremors shaking the house, sometimes cracking the foundation. The wind catching the grit and filling the valley in seconds, so fast and so dense, it's in your eyes, your mouth, your nose before you can race inside. But I have some neighbors up the road from me who have no voice to protest. They're both disabled, and they lease their land from the coal company. And it's written into their lease that if they say anything against the company, they'll lose their land. But it's not just them, for you see, their son and his wife and 3 grandchildren also live there. Where would they go? So about 5 years ago, the company applied for a valley fill permit. That's when they request permission from the Army Corps of Engineers to bury, pollute, redirect, or diminish a natural water source. When they requested permission to bury one of Eola's creeks that ran through 3 families' land, not everybody could stand together to oppose it. Some people stood to lose some land and water. Some people might lose their homes. Some would lose their jobs. Fear descended in the valley. Some neighbors we can't visit because there is only one way in and out of the valley. Company people know our vehicles. If our car or truck is seen in certain driveways, those folks, my neighbors, are threatened with losing their jobs or their homes. Yes, we stopped the valley fill in Eola. The company even apologized, but the emotional damage was done. Neighbors no longer trust each other. They no longer visit. Because of the distrust, I lost my best friend 3 years ago while she and her husband were fighting cancer, and he died. I needed to be there, and she needed me there, but the fabric of our lives was rent. She runs an outreach in our community, has a thrift store, a food pantry, and in the summer it houses volunteers who do low-income housing repair. I've been on the board of directors since the outreach incorporated. On Tuesday nights, I would talk to these volunteers about Kentuckians for the Commonwealth and the social justice work we do. Well, when the coal companies found out, they quit giving donations to the outreach. The next thing I knew, I was not allowed to talk to folks about KFTC or to leave printed materials. Next, I had to resign from our community park committee because folks believed I was the reason the company donated land and money to another group of neighbors to start a park about a mile from ours. The fabric of our lives is being shredded. I call it the slicing and dicing at the company's hands. The corporations are masters in these techniques. About 20 miles down the road, I have friends who live in Benham and Lynch, Kentucky. Coal companies there want to mine below their towns, endangering their aquifer, and surface mine their ridges above them, endangering Looney Creek, their surface water source. Looney Creek is so pure it is above standard before entering the required municipal filtration system. The people are protesting, but Lynch needs a new fire station. The county government has been pressured to tell the people if they won't allow the mining, they won't get the fire station. There's a legal term in Kentucky, undivided property. Say I were to have 7 children and I leave the land to all 7 without dividing it, the company only has to get permission to mine from 1 of the 7. It's hard to bring pressure on that 1, when often the reason they need the money is to pay off huge medical bills because they can't afford insurance. These corporations are all about slicing and dicing families, churches, communities, without heart or conscience. There's a verse in Hebrew scriptures that says, where there is no vision, the people perish. We need to stand up to these heartless corporations. We need to find ways of restoring our vision. Kentucky's state motto is united we stand, divided we fall. We need to restore our communities, to stand united, to drive away the fear, to have a common vision.
afternoon. I'm Laura Miller, and I'm honored to be able to speak today on behalf of Southern Appalachian mountain stewards and the people in Virginia's coal region. Concerning the specifics of community destruction and social disintegration, allow me to begin by highlighting what can be seen as an ideal Appalachian community. While a lot of you will recall the television program The Waltons and think of it as a completely fictional, it was in fact based on the Hamner Holler area in my own Virginia county of Wise. Earl Hamner, the autobiographical model for John Boy, was a Wise County native, and the loving and lovely community he created in his book and subsequent TV series contain a great deal of truth. The community had elements that we recognize as quintessentially Appalachian, including tightly knit families, strong faith, people living off the mountain's gifts of medicinal and food plants, hunting, gardening, quilting, music, storytelling, and even the Baldwin sisters' moonshine. There was also a strong will and ability to make do with what was on hand while cooperating and sharing with neighbors and other community members. Those of you familiar with the show will recall that it also included coal mining, but that was underground and not mountaintop removal, or MTR, or strip mining of any kind. Since the decades of the Waltons setting, much has changed in Appalachian communities, and it has not been progress. The destruction of communities and social disintegration present many faces. There is the extreme destruction, where towns are literally blown off the map. There are communities that are gradually depopulated as conditions become worse and worse until the majority of citizens simply must relocate in spite of the very real hardships involved. Of course, some find it impossible to move because they are poor and can't sell homes in MTR areas. So they live with intolerable conditions that include 24/7 blasting, air pollution from coal dust, the cracking of house foundations, and water pollution, including drinking wells and town supplies. Communities have been losing population, particularly young people, in the so-called brain drain for many years. This is driven by a lack of job opportunities, which is reflected in the high unemployment figures. As far back as 1954, a group of citizens from Wise propelled the creation of what became the University of Virginia's college there. The mission was to encourage youth to remain in the area and to educate them for careers other than mining. While this college has succeeded on numerous fronts, that original goal has not really been met. The youth and brain drain continues, and the coal companies still reign supreme. Communities are also destroyed when citizens are pitted against each other, a practice at which the coal companies excel. A friend of mine, a small businessman, was coerced into appearing at a hearing to show support for coal. With tears in his eyes, he apologized to us, but said he felt forced to make that appearance, wearing the coal industry's hat. Company executives had visited him with implied threats had he not followed their orders. These companies say that they are providing jobs, when in fact, MTR deliberately reduces the labor pool as they continue to value profit over people. This division of communities is also shown by the indifference of our political representatives to our issues. The Wise County Board of Supervisors has repeatedly ignored the comments of citizens who advocated at various times against the building of a new coal-fired power plant, in support of the EPA, and more. I have sat in the room and seen our people present comments by as much as a 15-to-1 majority, only to be ignored. At one time, the board even voted before taking comments, an obvious dismissal of our concerns. At other times, we have been allotted a specific amount of time to make presentations, only to be cut off in mid-time, because they did not want to even grant us the courtesy of listening. And these are local politicians, supposedly community advocates. Another aspect of our community is the southern custom of porch sitting. Recently, however, as coal trucks rumble by and spew their pollution, and as mountains are blown to smithereens, spreading dust far and wide, people no longer feel comfortable on their porches. They can't sit out and enjoy the neighborhood, visiting with passers-by. And as another slap in the face, the industry and even the state agencies which are tasked with protecting the citizens tell us to go inside, turn on your air conditioners, don't sit out anymore. A more serious example of community destruction is the prevalence of drug addiction, and particularly the abuse of prescriptions. OxyContin, nicknamed hillbilly heroin, was first spread from this region. While this kind of substance abuse is not to be excused, it must be understood before it can be corrected. I would like to quote one of our board members, Judy Anna Clark. Quote, "There just seems to be a spirit of oppression in the area because a lot of folks that would speak out against the coal companies are too intimidated to do so. Others think it's not going to do any good anyway. This oppression can lead to depression, not being able to change the circumstances. A lot of times the depression can lead to the rampant drug addiction that is so common here. I think lots take drugs as an escape mechanism. The fantasy world is better than the reality." Unquote. Another example is that recently my county of Wise has consolidated its 6 community high school into 3 more regional schools. This change was many years in the making as individual communities fought to keep their local schools in operation. But the populations have declined so that more schools could not be justified. But perhaps most telling of all is the fact that coal is said to be located under one of the high schools, and that once the school was shut down, mining there could begin. Meanwhile, of course, the schools, which had served as community meeting places and focal points, have been closed. Yet, make no mistake, Appalachians have a fierce pride as the original pioneers of this nation, and as people who have lived here for centuries. They have much of which to be proud. They have created worthy communities where people care about and look out for each other. These communities, traditions, and people are worth preserving. Thank you.
You know, something that I think about is how tough it is for people to hold on. The people that we talk to in the communities, the people that I work with in the communities, what they're being put through and how hard it is for them to hold on. I know firsthand, in order for me to do some of what I've done, I now live inside of a 6-foot fence. I call it my cage. But I'm caging the bad guys out and my good world in. But yeah, I live inside of 400 feet of chain link fence. I have security cameras, an attack dog, and I've had to go through some pretty extreme measures to remain in my home. And I think about people that have to go through this and how important it is that they do go through it. Because of the fact that I took the stand that I did, and I said, you're not putting me out of my grandfather's home. You might put me 6 feet under, but you won't put me out of my grandfather's home. And I think back on that because of that stand that I decided to take, myself and my family decided to take that stand. Because of that, stand that I took 10 years ago. The company behind my home is now no longer allowed to mine the coal. They had to leave. So, for the folks that is holding on to the communities, hold on with all you've got. There's victories out there. For the people that know what we're fighting for, the victories are small, but they're out there. And you could have never told me in 2003 when they moved in, well, when the flooding happened, I'll say it that way. No one could have ever told me, no matter how, I mean, I went with it with such a sense of determination, you know, I mean, just as sure as I took my next breath, I was going to stop these bastards. That was my attitude. And I had no idea that I'd actually do it. And I can't say I think everybody in this room had something to do with that victory. So give yourselves a hand for that. And what we've been able to do in Bob White, though, Bob White now has, there's 2.5 miles of streams that will be unaffected by mine drainage and mountaintop removal. There's 2 peaks that I look at that will not be affected by mountaintop removal. And that all started with a stubborn holler dweller, is what they called me to begin with. So yeah, the DEP, the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection, referred to me as a stubborn holler dweller. So yeah, it's important that we hang on to these communities. These communities are not only who we have been, but they are who our children are going to be. We have to hang on to these communities. We have to hang on to who we are. And sometimes that struggle gets tough. The coal industry's mean. There's been times that I was very seriously in fear for my life, and the lawyers say, Maria, we'll help pay to put you in a hotel, you and your kids, and y'all just go to a hotel. And I'm like, hell no, I'm going down with the ship. and they were seriously going to kill me. There was people watching over my home while I slept, and thank God those people were there. They actually caught people sneaking through my yard in the middle of the night when I would have been asleep. So yeah, it's knowing what people are being put through to hang on to these communities that connect us with our identity. Hang tight. We're winning. Thank you.
What strikes me is how, I guess, irrational the bottom line has become. The pursuit of profit at any price to others, of course, but ultimately self-destructive in itself, because you're rendering a very bountiful countryside completely useless in terms of you're converting it into a toxic sump, essentially. That's not useful to anybody anywhere, essentially indefinitely. And this brings up another good quote from Chris Hedges. He's when he says, "The free market's assumption that nature and human beings are objects whose worth is determined by the market allows each to be exploited for profit until exhaustion or collapse." That's the type of economy we have. We have a very speculative economy. You create a tax incentive, and it's like the California gold rush, like with biomass in the southeast, or with fracking, Pennsylvania and Texas, or George Bush walking out of his office at the end of the second term and allowing the dumping of mountains into ravines and opening up the floodgates of pure speculation. And was referred to before, in the, 17th, 18th, 19th centuries, you had nation states colonizing the planet and exploiting the resources of weaker portions of the world. And now we're colonized by corporations. They have no loyalty to people or place. They are above the law because they either make the law, and if they can't make the law, they break the law, and they walk away. 20,000 violations. Are you kidding me? And people don't do anything about it. So we have to redefine what economic development is, redefine what property rights are. We have to redefine what an acceptable job is. Making money on the suffering of others and the destruction that we've heard about today is simply, it can't be tolerated at any level. And that's where it's been raised today, the issues of the precautionary principle, sustainability come in terms of reversing this corporate mentality and corporate dominance over our economy, overseas. Peabody Coal's not only in the United States, they bought a lot of coal rights in Australia. They're over there now, wreaking havoc and destroying the land there. And we heard about that yesterday in India. And a lot of times it's the same corporations. So I think this was very relevant in that respect, and that and what it boils down to, I think we start, we'll get into this later, start locally to leverage policy up the chain, where people have a real say and can have a real influence on what happens to them, and can project that type of influence to the state level, to the national level, and through these types of forums internationally.
Okay, the Rio Declaration 20 years ago said that we all deserve a healthy environment, and all human beings have the right to a healthy life and a productive life in harmony with nature. And that's very linked to what you are saying, because you are talking not only about the impacts of your communities, your culture, your values, your families, your death relatives. You're also talking about your relationship with nature, with Mother Earth, like this wonderful and touching scripture says. So let me share with you something I written 2 years ago that has to do with this, because we are talking about crimes, and a crime is defined as to abandon, separate from the good path, to go away from the shown path. Transnational laws and these corporative laws says that crimes can be judged by guiltness, by the kinds of action, by the quality of the active subject, by the way he has proceeded, and by the results of damage caused. Most of the system and classification of crimes against human rights had its origin on the Holocaust last century. This process created the basis of the human rights system all over the world. The Holocaust was the trigger of the defense of human rights. Now, and also in your case, we are facing a kind of climate holocaust that compels us to create new governance systems that could respond to this new challenge, linking human rights, rights of the peoples, and Mother Earth rights to ensure the survival of the planet and humanity. You are doing the first steps in this way.
Thank you. I've been involved with many communities who tried to hang on and couldn't hang on for lots of reasons, and I think the loss of that culture, the loss of I think the word I hear often echoing is the place, the home, the roots. I have no roots. I can never go home, because even when you go home, there is no home, and that's more than a crime of, I mean, it's just, you can rebuild a house, but your home is your home, and so it's very important. Thank you.
Welcome back, Thomas. My cousin Connie's fenced in at the Tennessee prison for women. The devil's coiled razors slice morning's throat. Watch it bleed. Crimson hope, another sunrise. The mean glint of that sharp steel burns a cold sweat I'll never forget. Visiting her out there. Jailed birds catcall like desperate men. Shake it, lady! What kind of idiot wears beige pumps to teach your cousin to read? They summon her by a number, not her name. Inmate 401 33 401 33. We're crammed in a cubicle without a window. She twirls a tooth-whittled pencil. I tremble and point to the page. Form the B sound in bird, Connie. Buff, buff, bird. She parrots. Buff, buff, bird. He beat my oldest young'un half. Buff, buff, blind. So I pistol whipped her from behind. She's got a black comb in her back pocket, like a hip pistol. Gonna unlock it. Buff, buff, bird. Come on, Connie. Buff, buff, bird. Her state custody kindergartner weighs the dirt side of the seesaw down as we drown in a sea of vowels. Hey, I owe you, little boy blue. Connie wants to learn to Read that boy the Bible. Start with bird. Dolly Parton's version of His Eye is on the Sparrow flits through my mind. We don't rush the reading because we got nothing but time. And I know He watches me. Wind blows the pages, pages flutter like wings. One day she'll know why the caged bird sings. Start with bird. Come on, Connie. Bird. It's been such an honor today hearing the individual stories, and it makes me always want to, I think of that person and their mother and father and their sisters and brothers and just all the individual stories that come out of that. My great aunt told me one of my favorites, and it was about her husband who had been in the war, and she said he was a musician, and he ended up going to the war, and he was just never the same. So he was like a bird in a cage the rest of his life. No, there's nothing else to tell about that. Okay, it's got to read to. So this is about my great aunt Abby. Sitting on the sofa beside my great aunt Abby, she quotes a line from her favorite movie. Says, girl, it's a sin to kill a mockingbird, 'cause all it wants to do is sing. Your Uncle Sam was a singer before he was drafted. Now he's a stray bull cross-fenced on an unfamiliar battlefield. So sick of the sight of blood, he can't castrate the hogs. Our farm is ruined. That cold black cowlick stands on end as he faces the wind and the rest of his life without a leg. The limb was lopped off in a foreign war. Hilly never figured out what he was fighting for. Now his mind wanders foxholes as he strangles the neck of his guitar. He crossed those waters against his will and made a living till then off of moonshine still. Sweet songs, copper coils, and a bayou moon. Oh, he'd fly all over that pine wood stage. But now the music only fuels his rage. He cocks that angry arm and saws twilight in two. Might as well slug foothills with his fist for all the good his anger does him. My Aunt Evie'd say, mad enough to fight a circle saw. By the end of her telling, my ankles are swelling and dawn breaks across her morning face. She spreads the story's end out like a steaming hot breakfast. Bacon strips, big old cat head biscuits, and muscular coffee. She turns and rattles the bars of my two-stick arms, realizing I've lived my life in the pin that war put around your uncle. Ain't that low down? The last piece I want to do for you today is a piece I wrote for my grandmother, and I was always struck by the fact my grandmother never got over the fact that her daughter left home. And since I have children now, I completely get it. I used to think, why does our grandmother walk down the long gravel drive with us every time we leave her house? And walk on my mother's side of the car, and she'd always knock on the window and say to my mother 30 times, because it was about a quarter-mile driveway, "When are you coming home, girl?" You know, and I was like, well, she's married and has kids and lives somewhere else. But, you know, my grandmother cannot get over it. And then I got a little older, as my mother warned me, and I understood that. This is called "When You Coming Home, Girl." My mama lit out for college, 1953. Warming a Greyhound bus seat and a sack of dreams. She traces the bus driver's tattoo on my arm every time she tells the story. Chest squares in cheesecloth soak a Samsonite suitcase. A soiled note that her mother wrote said, "When you coming home, girl? Soon?" She tells how my daddy dazzled her, kicking quarters in his shirt pocket during the lunch line. Second week of school, he bought a ring. He couldn't afford the thing, and she quit school to marry. Let's leave this hell-holy holler, dusty squalor. His Impala down Highway 24. He swore he'd make a doctor or a lawyer, junk bond salesman, hotel developer. My grandma lit her heart afire, set it in a windowsill, mouthing prayers to my mama's senior picture. When are you coming home, girl? When are you coming home? Sure, my daddy gave her a house to keep, some kids to raise, an old clunker car to go places she'd never seen before. But it wasn't long till my mama's Northern Star fell out of her house dress pocket onto linoleum. Sometimes at night, right here in this drafty kitchen, crickets pinch her nerves while viceroys soothe her soul. She aches to answer the call across the years. When are you coming home, girl? When are you coming home? Thank you so much for having me.
Good afternoon, y'all. Our fourth case study is related to damages to air, land, and water. Our expert witness is Cindy Rank of West Virginia Highlands specifically. Donna Branham, also of West Virginia, is one of our witnesses. Donna Eros of Kentucky, and Ann League of Tennessee.
Yes, I am Cindy Rank, and what I know about mining is from my volunteer work with the West Virginia Highlands Conservancy. For the last 40 years of my nearly 69 years, I've been in West Virginia and central West Virginia. Of those 40 years, the last 35, I have learned a lot about mining and the regulatory process that involves the impacts from mining. My title here today is expert. What it should say is longtime witness to what goes on. I don't know that I would consider myself an expert in any of the things we're talking about, but I certainly have watched and learned, painfully sometimes, what transpires, what should transpire, what really transpires. And in the last 25 years, I've been paying a lot more attention to mountaintop removal mining. I'm fortunate enough to live in the middle of West Virginia. To the north of me is a lot of acid mine drainage and new drilling, a lot of underground mine pools, all of which do great damage to our water resources. To the south of me, of course, is what we are talking about today in mountaintop removal mining. I only know about any of this because the mining companies came to our communities back in 1977, and like many of the people in this room, I was thrust into this movement as a result of that. And you learn a lot. We studied the laws, we studied the agencies, we figured out, can we do anything? What can we do? It's a painful process, and you've heard a lot of the human impacts from people today who are totally frustrated because it's a frustrating process. But I think, and you've heard a lot about the air and the water and everything that we were supposed to be talking about, or I'm supposed to be expert about, but I'm not sure that the statistics of whether or not there are 400 or 500 mountains that have been flattened, or 2,000 or more headwater streams of great value have been totally destroyed, either buried or impacted by selenium or acid mine drainage or whatever, or how many million acres or so of forests have been totally destroyed or fragmented so that the ecosystems are no longer what they were in the great hardwood forests that we are so proud of in the Central Appalachian region. Sometimes those statistics fall short of really explaining what goes on because the industry has a tendency to paint a different picture from what we see. And I think to add to what everybody was talking about today, we have to acknowledge the fact that there are so many scientists out there today doing extremely good work and trying their darndest to pinpoint the damage to even those tiny little critters in the streams that seem so far away from people who are having problems drinking that water. But those are the things that can be used in the legal setting that we have. And we have to admit, we do have laws that should, theoretically and ideally, prevent any of this stuff from happening to any of these people. We have laws that are meant to balance, whatever that may be, production and extraction of coal and everything else, but only within the confines that would not interrupt, would not interfere, would certainly not put people out of their homes and put communities under the rubble of mountaintop removal that we know today. So, I have for the press and for the flash drives that we have available as evidence put in a couple of the major studies recently, you know, and they have footnotes, like 5 pages of footnotes of studies after studies after studies that talk about the birds that have been impacted and the aquatic insects, the life that has been destroyed and is being destroyed. Unfortunately, we've reached that point where it's the human lives that are going to make the difference, even though for years in the court system we have had proof positive that there is damage, and what happens is the industry implies that it doesn't really impact people. What difference does it make if we don't have mayfly A? We always have mayfly B. What's the difference? To the industry, these things are change, not impairments. Not impairments that reach into the hearts and the homes of the people that are affected. And that's where a lot of what's being done today is so necessary, because the message has to get out that the loss of mayflies in one stream really does have an impact on the ecosystem, and that ecosystem really does have an impact on the human part of that ecosystem. We are all part of what's being impacted. And I think Viv put up a map that I would like to concentrate on, although for a minute, I think Willa had this up also in some different fashion. You can Google Earth and see what's happening now, you know, the active mines that are out there. What is always impressive to me is the GIS maps that are now online on the DEP that show the permits, not just the active mines, but those that have been permitted, those that haven't been mined yet, but will be. And this, oops, maybe we can move back out a little bit. Even further. Okay, this is, industry always says, oh, it only affects 2%, 3%, maybe 5% of the state of West Virginia. I'm already out of time. Very quickly then, instead of looking, these are 15 counties in West Virginia, and you could extend that into Kentucky and Southwest Virginia as well. It may be that these 15 counties, or the 25 or so in southern West Virginia, aren't all impacted because it doesn't all have coal that's available for this. But if you look, wait a minute, Cindy brought me this. If you look at Mingo, Logan, Boone, that's a lot of those counties. That concentration and the scale of this mining is what we're talking about today. It may be 2% or 5% of the state of West Virginia, but if you take that pie-shaped area that contained maybe 10 or 12 counties, this is huge. This is a scale, and it is, the impacts are permanent, pervasive, and irreversible. And we really have to end at least this much of the destruction that's going on in the earth. I'll end there.
It's an honor to be here today, and it's good to see all the young people out today. My name is Donna Branham. I'm from Mingo County, West Virginia, and as you just seen on the map, we have plenty of mines in the area. We've heard some really good stats, some good things about what we're trying to do. There's still a lot going on. Today I'd like to tell you my own personal history with the coal mining industry. I have a long history with it. I was raised in a holler that was named for the coal company, 27 Holler. It was the 27 Allen Creek mine. The coal tipple and the coal load out was located 1.5 miles below my home. My dad and all my uncles worked at that mines. In the community where I lived, all of my dad's people were there. I had 2 sets of grandmothers and grandfathers. I had great aunts, uncles, cousins. Everyone was kin and knew everyone. The mine started during strip mining, and people started losing their waters, and the mines did come back and start drilling wells again. But they would test the wells and the water would be poison. It would have the selenium in it, acid in it. It was unfit for human consumption. They finally stopped underground mining. My dad retired. Him and my mother still lived in that hollow above the mines, but it was shut down. A couple years after my dad retired and the mines was shut down, they decided they would come back and do mountaintop removal mining. So they started blasting, and with the blast, people's homes, the foundation was cracking. Even my parents' chimney pulled away from the house like 5 foot. It was just teetering. They lost their water again. All of us children was away from home, so it was just my mom and dad there. We called, it was Hobet Mining Company that come back to do the strip mining. I called Hobet myself and I said, you know, you burnt my parents' water. What are you going to do about this? Oh, don't worry about it, Miss Branham. We're going to bring them some water. So they brought him some water in this great big plastic barrel. You could look in it and see all these little squiggly things running around in it. I said, Mother, you can't drink that water. She said, oh, what am I supposed to do? So I called again. They said, oh, I think that water's okay, but we'll send somebody out to test it. In the meantime, I took a test sample myself and sent it off. The mine sent a man out with 2 gallons of Clorox bleach. He poured it in that big tub of water. Told my parents it was just fine. I got the report back, and it wasn't even fit to wash your hands in, or your feet, or anything else. So I showed that to the mines. So they started bringing out, it wasn't just my parents, it was the whole community up there. They started bringing them out these big boxes of just gallon jug waters. My mom is real old-fashioned. I mean, you know, you couldn't whoop her and make her go to the laundromat. That was just a waste of money and time. You don't do that. So here she was trying to lug these big gallons of water and all that stuff, and it was just too hard on the whole community. So finally, most of the people up there decided to sell for just what the mines wanted anyway. So to hurry and get through my story, the reason why my parents and my dad's brothers decided to move, my dad was getting out of the bathtub one evening. They let off this humongous shot. It was the biggest one that they'd ever done. Shook the house so bad that my dad fell and he had a heart attack. He didn't die from that heart attack, but it did cause a lot of problems for him. Him and mother moved. My mom lived 1 more year. I held my mom's head in my lap the night she died, crying to go back home, because there wasn't enough places for that whole community to relocate to. We lost a lot of our tight-knitness. We lost our love. I feel like an orphan most of the time. And from that point on, I've just watched how the mines do. And my husband was also a coal miner, but I've watched countless and countless of communities in my area impacted the same way this hollow that I grew up in was. People have no idea what we go through. I heard a couple of remarks about what the price of coal is. I can tell you the true price of that coal. It is your heart. It is your soul. It is your family. It's the air you breathe. It's the water you drink. It's the children you try to raise. Everyone in this whole world has a responsibility toward the environment to try to keep it clean, to better it. Everyone needs to look at their own carbon footprint. There's something that everyone can do. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me to share my little piece of this wider story. I'm Donna Eros. I'm United Methodist full-time clergy, and I'm almost ashamed to say it. And I say that it is who I am, but Martin Luther King Jr. commented that the church should be the headlights for positive change, but on issues of land, air, and water, and the people of Appalachia. The church has been the taillights, and I'm sorry about that. We've been far behind in this work. We United Methodist clergy are under a system of itinerancy. That means we're sent to appointments by our bishop. Before coming to Eastern Kentucky almost 2 years ago, I lived and served in Central Kentucky. And I've worked with our conference justice team for 8 years now, mostly in the area of creation care. During that time, I was introduced to this radical strip mining process that was called mountaintop removal. I had no idea what it was, and most people who don't live here do know. I was introduced to it by people living in areas affected, and then by taking tours by van and then by airplane to see the devastation done to the land. The most vivid image to me was sitting up high in a small aircraft, looking out one side and seeing wonderful, lush, rolling hills, and punctuated naturally by higher areas. And then turning and looking out the other way and seeing gray devastation, a moonscape as far as the eye could see. The first looking out this side was just how God had created, is what I pictured. And the other side was the terrible reality of MTR. As far as the eye could see, one side life and the other side death. And then I moved to Eastern Kentucky, right in the middle of it all, and the large ornate church just up the road from me, and that meant up into the mountains, actually south, but you gotta get turned around mountain speak, you know. The large ornate church had been built by a coal baron early in the last century. And you know, many churches are still now very much controlled by coal money. That hampers the pastor from saying much, let me tell you. I heard there was strip mining in my county, Lawrence County, and I wanted to see, but I drove up some pretty windy, narrow roads and never did find it. And I thought to myself, pretty well hidden, just like MTR sites were a few years ago. People just couldn't see them, so they figured, well, this couldn't be happening. The next county over, the story's a little bit different. Anyone can see the immense expanses of mountaintop removal, the bare land left by MTR. Nearly 30% of the area of Martin County is gone. 30% of a county. The county officials and others seem pretty proud of it. They have big signs labeling a business park, and it's acres upon acres of flat and empty land. The only thing there is a gray block prison. When I first was told I'd be moving to Louisa, I looked on the map and saw it was on a river, and I was pretty excited. Got there and people said, oh, you don't go down to the river. You can't put your feet in it even. You don't catch fish and expect to eat them. And I thought, oops, no baptisms in the river. We moved into the parsonage, and there was a water purification system, and we said, what's this about? Well, you better use it if you want to drink water around here. To add to all this, the Big Sandy power plant, which is one of the dirtiest in the nation, is 5 miles downstream from us. Coal trains, about 100 cars each, run every day 1 block from our house, and coal trucks constantly go 1 block the other side of our house. Our kids came to visit, and we needed more chairs, and so I asked them to bring in chairs from the patio, or the screened-in porch place, and they brought him in and said, "What is this black stuff all over the chairs?" And I said, "Well, it was coal dust and ash." And they said, "And we're all breathing this?" And I said, "Yeah, and the whole community is breathing this." When I first came to town and started preparing my bulletins for the first Sunday, I was appalled to see the names of people with cancer, heart disease, lung issues. It's hard for folks to connect those issues with land, the water and their air. But the studies that have been cited today show that it's most likely true. God created the land in all its glory and beauty. God created the water, pristine and necessary for life. God provided for all our needs in abundance, but the greed of a few have desecrated the garden, bringing death and scarcity into our region. Thank you.
These things freak me out. Hey y'all, my name is Ann League. I'm from Tennessee. I'm with an organization called SOCM, Statewide Organizing for Community Empowerment, which is a 40-year-old grassroots organization that the members have been fighting strip mining and destructive extractive services for 40 years. Tennessee is an interesting state. They're actually in a state of denial over the presence of mountaintop removal in the state. They've come up with some interesting semantics and euphemisms so they can say there is not mountaintop removal there. It's called cross ridge mining or area mining or just large steep slope mining. I am originally from South Carolina, and I was kind of pushed kicking and screaming into this fight because I bought some land in one of the biggest mining regions in the state, Campbell County. Beautiful country, rolling hills. I thought I was in heaven. Started building my dream house. Was out exploring the woods around the property and ran into a couple of truckloads of gentlemen who didn't look like they were out in the woods just having fun. So I asked them what was going on, and they said they were exploring some property that was getting ready to be clear cut and then strip mined. I was devastated, as you could imagine. Started looking into strip mining because in South Carolina we've got Peaches and Myrtle Beach and Darlington. We don't have a lot of strip mining. Found SOCM, started learning about strip mining. Wasn't too concerned until about 3 months after the mining actually started on Zeb Mountain, which was the large mine site, which is not mountaintop removal, but cross ridge mining. 3 months after the mining started, my well water turned bright orange, which, as you know, is a great color for the uniform if you're playing basketball for Coach Pat Summit, but it's not very good for the water that you're trying to drink or survive on. In complaining to county officials, state officials, federal officials, going to lawyers, I found that the burden of proof was on me to prove that the mining company was what ruined my water, that they had no responsibility at all, that I had to put my money out. I had to go to the permits. I had to go to the county tax assessors. I had to go to the local OSM office. I had to look at the permits to do all the study and research to find out about this. The coal company could just sit back and say, oh, it's an act of God, or we had nothing to do about it. This was naturally occurring. It's just the way the water table works. And that's what happens to everyone. It's the burden of proof are on the people who are being impacted, not upon the companies who are doing the impacting. And that was a huge wake-up call for me. So I'm sorry I'm pounding the podium, but it's what I do. I have not just been a member and an activist, I'm now on staff with this organization. And one of the things I do is I talk to county officials, I talk to state officials, I talk to federal officials. And what I have found is that there is a culture of customer relationships for the industry that these state officials and federal officials have. And I think that's something that we have got to change. We've got to ask the tax assessor's office. In Tennessee, we don't really have a regulatory agency. It controls coal mining in the state. It was turned over to the federal agencies in 1984. But the agency that is in South Carolina, Tennessee, regulates water quality. They're buddies with the coal industry, as it happens in every other state here. When you go to the Office of Surface Mining Reclamation and Enforcement, they know all the industry people names, first names. They go out to dinner with them. There is this culture that they're there to help their customers, the coal industry. And what we need is for these agencies to turn around and start thinking of us as the customers. It's the communities, the people there that are living there, that are the customers that need to be satisfied, not the industry. I've done a lot after my well water turned bright orange and I started researching this. I also learned how to do stream surveys. I never knew what a water penny was until I started going out and doing this. I've found a lot of interesting people out in the communities. Talked to people who have had several experiences like the witnesses before me, who their well water started tasting bad or smelling funny, and they called the coal company, and the coal company said, oh, just pour a bottle of bleach down it, it'll be fine. I actually started doing water testing, so I found out what chain of custody is. Found out that you cannot use the same laboratory that the coal company uses because they'll switch your samples for tap water. Found out that the nearest lab that you can use is probably 75 miles away, and you better have some good coolers. It's just something that the burden is on the people in the communities. We're all fighting for this, and we need to step up. We are stepping up, but there needs to be a lot more pressure put on the local, state, and federal regulators, officials, politicians to come to our protection. It's something that I'm finding out in Tennessee. We had some legislation this year called the Tennessee Scenic Vistas Protection Act, and it was a battle to convince, and we never did convince most of the state legislators that there is mountaintop removal in Tennessee. So it's an uphill battle for us all, and I'm so happy to see everybody here that we're fighting hard, and we're going to continue to fight. So thank you all for listening to us.
So, I'm mad. Okay, this is another kind of trial. I can't speak for my fellow jurors here, but if this is another kind of trial, it's like coal, guilty, communities, innocent, tortured, murdered, blamed for somebody else's, that they've created their own problems. Every human rights you can imagine, those that have already been mentioned, have been violated in this region, in this area, and it's time to stop. It's just time to stop the harm. Just listening to all of you women, and thank you all for coming up and being so courageous and standing up and speaking out and being converted. Appreciate it.
I totally share what Luis just have said. I am also really very surprised and indignada. I don't know. There is a global movement of indignados in the world. I'm joining them with these cases. And really, I don't need to tell you that water means life. You already know, and we already know. And Bolivia and other countries 2 years ago made a huge step inside the UN system, made in the approval of a resolution declaring the human right to water and sanitation. And inside the UN, there is a reporter, a special reporter on human rights. Her name is Catarina de Albuquerque, and she just made a report on the US situation on water last year, I mean in September, October. So I recommend you to look for her and to ask what she has to say about this. and about fracking also. That is a big, big issue here in the USA. Well, it's useless to say that in that resolution, the USA government just abstained to vote. They couldn't say no, but they abstained. So I also want to thank you all for inviting me. It is an honor. And for me, it's very exciting because 4 years ago, we have been working to build an international tribunal on climate justice. And there is a big coalition all over the world that is looking all these initiatives in order to think how we can build this in a binding relation with the governments and with the UN system. So I hope that this initiative would help. And it is really important because all the hearings and the tribunals that I've seen in South America and what the Women Task Force have organized has to do with the impacts of global warming in the lives of people. I mean, floods and the elevation of the temperatures or whatever. But in this case, this is very innovative because you are looking at the real reasons of global warming. And there are international instruments that has to do with this. So I think that this tribunal is going to contribute to these initiatives very much, and I encourage you to follow with these initiatives, and you have all us to support your actions.
I totally agree with my colleagues here. For the reason I do agree that I'm the only male, so I can't do it. But it is a problem when the regulators consider the regulatees clients, and I've seen that happen too in my home state. But even if the system were working as it should, I mean, the sheer volume of waste, the sheer extent and pervasiveness of the pollution to water, to air, to soil. The only thing you can do from an ethical standpoint is to phase out coal-fired power, and with it, all the mining. We can do it technologically now. We can do it financially. It'll save us money. But what we've heard today is that the ethical nature of this is probably the most important thing, and that the only place coal mining of any kind should be viewed, or coal-fired power, is in a museum.
So to close out this on behalf of our panel, we do have some recommendations that we are considering, and there's 11 in total. I'm not going to read all 11 of them. I'm only going to read a couple of them, and then my colleagues can read a couple. But the first one is, because of the current house prices in mountaintop removal areas, an immediate moratorium on all mountaintop removal operations in Central Appalachian, along with other extreme forms of any surface coal mining operations which use explosives to expose and mine coal seams. So we are calling for a moratorium on all of that. These are not eloquently written, we didn't have much time up here.
And the disposal of coal waste from mountaintop removal or surface mining shall be banned in valleys and headwaters and streams.
Well, I would add that another recommendation would be the acknowledge that clean water, air, and intact mountains and ecosystems are the necessary components of healthy lives and communities in Central Appalachia. Access to clean, potable water should be declared a human right in concordance with the multilateral system already advanced. Also, passage of the Clean Water Protection Act on the federal level, which would restore the original intent of the Clean Water Act, thereby no longer permitting the disposal of mine waste into headwater streams.
In addition to those, going after the corporate power in the United States and internationally, getting private money out of elections, eliminating corporations as persons in our law. In terms of policy, there's the renewable electricity standard, but that's very important, but tied to that nationally should be a feed-in tariff so that we can generate our own power and kiss the utility companies goodbye. The other thing is that in my experience in Indiana anyway, we had a lot of good influence at the local level working with people who are well organized, which you are all doing. And I know you don't already have enough to do, but work to take over local government. That's the beginning of changing this whole thing. You can have a lot of influence and use it to change things locally and at the state level. And then a recognition, I think, by the state, maybe local government, that all people living in Central Appalachia have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, including the enjoyment of their property.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And hi, everybody. Or as you folks would probably have me say, hi, y'all. I'm Sally Dunn, and I am with the Loretto community, one of the sponsoring organizations for this tribunal. I am so happy to be here. I have been so proud all day and really proud for weeks and weeks as we have all worked real hard planning all of the details leading up to this very special day. I just want to talk for a couple of minutes and tell you all a little bit about the Loretto community. We are a neighbor of yours. We have a history and deep roots in the state of Kentucky. The Loretto community was founded 200 years ago in the year 1812. So this year we are celebrating a very special 200th Jubilee, and we are sponsoring many events across the country in celebration of our 200th Jubilee, and this tribunal is one of our Loretto Community Jubilee events. And thank you, yes. The first Jubilee event that we held this year took place in Denver, Colorado, the last weekend in January, and it was a water symposium called The Downstream Neighbor. And our friend Elizabeth Paredo was with us at that event as well. That event was speaking of the sacred common, which is our water, which we have touched on all day today. So these themes are common. They come up in every situation, in every issue that is of concern globally. You find the same related issues coming up over and over again. I just want to tell you that the Loretto community is very, very happy to be a part of this particular event. As a matter of fact, one of our members is someone that many of you probably know or know of. Maureen O'Connell is a sister of Loretto. And in the Loretto community, we have two different ways that you can be a member of the community. You can either be a vowed sister of Loretto, or you can be a co-member of Loretto. And I'm very proud to tell you that I am a co-member of Loretto. My friend and colleague Rosa Lizarde is a co-member of Loretto, and our friend Minton Sparks is a co-member of Loretto. So in our community, we welcome anyone who would like to join us in solidarity with the goals and the values that we hold dear and that every member of the community commits to work toward in some way or another. And our values are peace and social justice. And in pursuing those values, a decision was made 20 years ago by the community leaders that if Loretto wants to work towards systemic change on a global level, we need to be somewhere on a global stage. And so 20 years ago, we sent a Loretto community member to New York to begin to participate in the UN process. And over these 20 years, we have established our NGO status, non-governmental organization. We have applied for and received official accreditation from the United Nations. And what that means is that we can have a presence there in New York. We can participate in the UN process. We can attend meetings. We can submit oral and written statements, and we can advocate for issues of importance to us with delegations to the United Nations from all 193 member states. And it is in that capacity that that we were able to meet and become friends with Rosa and the Feminist Task Force, which is doing this amazing work on behalf of marginalized women around the world. And in the Loretto community, women's issues is a very important value for us. So it was a natural for us to want to collaborate with the Feminist Task Force in launching the first Women's Climate Justice Tribunal here in the United States. From what I have heard from the testimony that I heard today, I would say that we need to talk a little bit about where do we go from here. We've heard the recommendations from our jurists, and I would certainly affirm everything that they have said. You've heard us talk about taking the results of this tribunal to Rio. That reference is to a UN Global Conference on Sustainability, which is taking place in Rio de Janeiro next month. And we will be compiling the results of this tribunal along with our second Women and Climate Justice Tribunal to take place in Chicago in just a few weeks. And we will take the results of those two tribunals to this global conference in Rio de Janeiro. But that's not, it doesn't have to stop there. I mean, these recommendations that you all have been working so hard for a long time, we would hope that we could add to your efforts by providing another layer of accessibility for advocacy for these issues, such as, remembering that this is a women's tribunal. Think of all the women to whom we could present these results. I'm thinking in terms of Hillary Clinton, Michelle Obama, Kathleen Sebelius, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Susan Rice, the U.S. representative to the UN. So this this is not going to stop here. We are pledging to you our commitment and our desire to work with you in, this is just the beginning. Where do we go from here? Something that we all need to work on and come to a consensus on. But we certainly want to do what we can to help. So, in closing, I would just say that on behalf of the Loretto community and the Feminist Task Force, I applaud you all for your hard work. I give heartfelt thanks to all of the witnesses for their courage, their perseverance, and their wisdom in all that you shared with us today. And to just tell you that you inspire me to continue to work for peace and social justice in any way I can. Thanks very much.
We're almost at the end. We have a little special commemoration that we would like to do, and Maria has helped prepare this, and I believe Robin Blakeman is also going to help with this. There were a lot of people, a number of people, who I know would be in the room if they could be in the room. Terry Blanton, for example. All of us know and love Terry, and she's very sick. No surprise. Other people that have worked very hard on this issue no longer are with us. They have passed on. We have been fighting this issue for about 15 years actively, and people like Cindy have been fighting it probably for longer than that. So we want to bring their spirits into the room. I think they were here anyway. I think they were witnesses in another way, in another realm. So we want to close with that, and also want to remind you that after this event, we do have a little reception for people to talk more about this. You may feel a real need to talk about this. There's a lot to digest. There's a lot to mourn, but there's also a lot to feel hope over and joy for. I feel very grateful for everyone who has taken this day to be with us, to be witnesses to the witnesses. And those of you who support the work of the people in this room, we are eternally grateful. Couldn't do it without you. So before I lose it, we'll carry on this last piece. So hang in there just a couple of more minutes.
Can we get the lights on the stage? Thank you.
The idea here is that there are missing voices, so you won't see anyone at the podium as we do this, just to let you know. These are people whose passion for justice will continue to burn within each of us in all that we do. Next slide. Patty and Butch Seabach lived most of their lives in Printer, West Virginia. Butch retired from the U.S. Marine Service, a Vietnam veteran, and came home to work 30 years as a UMWA coal miner. Now they spend their retirement years fighting for clean water, retirement, and the health care benefits that they worked for. Patty took on and won weight regulations for overweight, out-of-control coal trucks on our highways in 2003. She now struggles with many health problems in her family because of water pollution.
Patty says, I lost my father, my father-in-law, my sister-in-law, all to cancer. I lost my mother during this fight, and cancer has nearly took my husband. These are friends of mine, so please keep that in mind.